Morning, guys. Today I wanted to talk a lot about my first bodysuit, some of my problems with it, and some of how it came to be. Um, I've talked a lot about kind of what was in my bodysuit, and obviously people could see it, even though the right arm isn't visible in most of my old pictures. Um, I wanted to get into more about what I didn't like about how it came to be, and perhaps give some insight to better direct people not to make some of the mistakes that I made or that I feel I made. As I know there's a lot of people even that watch these vlogs that like my first bodysuit more than my blackout. And while I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, and I think it's mostly a stylistic change for me even, um, there were some real problems with that first bodysuit, both from an artistic standpoint and from an execution standpoint. There was a lot of things that just didn't work technically and artistically just didn't look the way I wanted them to. Now, where I've showed clearly over the last few months the tentacles that I'm starting to build with Rick on the third torso, that's more where I wanted to be with the first torso. When I originally pitched the idea to the artist that did the the first set of tentacles, my inspiration was sort of like H.P. Lovecraft meets like Malboro from Final Fantasy, if that makes sense. So Malboro is a giant mouth with tentacles. He's a giant green mouth with tentacles, basically, that he uses his legs and arms and limbs, and it's just a giant tentacle monster. And the eye itself was inspired by Airyman from Final Fantasy, which is a floating eyeball. I drew this image as a kid. I've covered the meaning of my eye tattoo in another whole video, but I drew this image of a kid of almost like the infusion of these two creatures. Now, as an adult, I wanted to make that more into something more timeless. So that's where the H.P. Lovecraft influence comes in, and it's a little more refined. There's a little bit more lore there too to go off of. So that was kind of my idea for the tentacle monster, the eye, and all that. But we had a different interpretation of that idea, and I probably should have been a little more forward about what I actually wanted. But the tentacles to me always looked more like an octopus or a giant squid or something, where I wanted them to be. If they were going to be aquatic at all, I would have gone with like a sea monster or something, because that was more horrific. I wanted it to be more horror. See, the eye for me is more like a horror thing than anything. The imagery is meant to be more horrific, not so contemporary. It ended up looking a little too flat and a little too bland for me. So that might sound strange when you consider that I blacked it all out, and clearly there's less depth or creativity in the blackout from an artistic standpoint. But the blackout was an answer to technical problems more than artistic problems. Though I didn't love the tentacles for the artistry that went into them personally, they were also poorly executed. There was a lot of shading that was half in there. There was a lot of lines that were really blurry, that were already falling out, even after having touched them up with that same artist at least 3 times. This is the thing, like, I get into this a bit every now and then, but every single part of that first suit was done multiple times. So when people say, how does it feel to black out old work? Like, they say that as if I've only had it done twice or something, or now I'm doing this stuff for the 3rd time. No. The blackout was done several times. The old work was done several times. A lot of things need to be touched up in a bodysuit. Nothing is going to be perfect first time. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do the work to make it better, but if you're looking for a polished, perfect piece, it means you're going to have to do more than one session on things quite often. unless you're working with like a master world-class artist that's going to charge you like $3,000 an hour. And even in that case, you might end up needing touch-ups. So anyway, a lot of those lines were not in there super solid. And if they were in there, they were shaky. This is the thing, a lot of people were never close up on the suit. There was a lot of scarring in there. There was a lot of, like I said, shading that needed to be done over and over and still wasn't in there. And I never actually wanted the tentacles to be black and gray either. They were shaded to that point with the vision of coloring in parts of the negative with purple and red. That's something that I've never talked about on this vlog before, or even on my Instagram. I've never mentioned the fact that that bodysuit, from my vision of it, it was abandoned by the artist before it was finished. So those tentacles were supposed to be more in line with my roses. My whole suit was supposed to be more full color. There was supposed to be less black and gray and more full color. But the artist that did the tentacles was intimidated by the color. He never admitted that, but even the color that we put into the eye, if you look at old pictures of my eye tattoo, it was very washed out. It was like a weird pale orange and pink. That orange was actually supposed to be orange, yellow, and red. It was supposed to be layered color, and all of it just kind of washed out to this milky pink orange thing. And now we've had the eye, I've had that eye touched up by, I think the eye itself has been done 5 or 6 times. We're going to hit some more in there when we get a little further on the torso itself. We're going to put some more black and even more red in there yet. But the eye never quite worked out the way I wanted it to either. So on top of all of this, all of these problems that I have with some of the work that was done, it wasn't done quite the way I would have liked it to have been done. We also had the problem of, as a youngster approaching tattoos, I didn't envision myself having a bodysuit. I never said I thought I was going to have a bodysuit when I was young. I was doing big pieces, fairly big pieces. I had this chest piece long before I had the eye, for example. Artistically, I arranged some things. People ask me if I got together with an artist before I did my bodysuit and planned it out because it looked good. No, I had a vision for how I wanted things to be. So I had a keyhole in mind for my center that I didn't get done until much later. It was going to be the center of the eye, and this key would connect to it. So the key was designed by another artist, and the keyhole was done much later in life after the key by an inferior artist, I will say. And I was the visionary for that. I had that idea when I came up with the key. It was all meant to be, in a way. It's just I didn't have the money to do that earlier in life. I've gone over that in some other videos. So the keyhole and the key connecting, that was always planned. But there were some other elements I wasn't sure on. Like I had a little bat on my torso, like below my eye. And before that, I had these 2 skeleton hands. They were like right here. But you can barely see them because everything is the same tone. Now, if it had gone the way I wanted, those hands would have popped back out because they would have been black and gray in the middle of a field of like red and purple tentacles. So those hands would have actually popped out, and it would have popped that bat out more too. But the hands were done separate from the vision of the eye and the key. So they didn't really have much of a role to play in that suit. Likewise, there were also some old stars and stuff in that suit, like here, and then one below my belly button. And those things were just kind of in the way too. Because as I said, I was getting tattooed before I had the vision of having a bodysuit. So a lot of the old elements were just cobbled in and made to work. Or now with the blackout being basically a fresh canvas, and the only things I have left are the best parts of my first suit, and those have even been worked on to at a ridiculous point, to make sure that they're as good as possible if they're the only things I'm keeping. Where now I have almost a blank canvas to create a whole total vision. Um, I'm able to, in a way, reconstruct a bigger, bolder version of the first suit. Um, Originally, when I conceived the black on black idea, I wasn't sure how much was going to be visible in it, how punchy we were going to be able to make all of this. So obviously my ideas have changed since we started. But once I seen what was possible, it was like, okay, let's see what we can do to create a really cool reimagining of the first suit almost, because I didn't hate the subject matter that was on my torso. I did hate the subject matter that was on my right arm because it didn't make any sense. The spawn arm, my left arm, I thought it was a pretty cool sleeve, but again, it was too bright for me and it was too almost unrelated. Like, it was stuff that I liked, but like not enough to have on my skin forever, I don't think. Where that's where I'm not touching my sleeves now until I'm ready and finish my torso, because I want to bridge my torso off onto my sleeves now. I have some ideas in mind, but nothing concrete. I want to make this a whole running body theme now, centering along these big themes that I've kept, like the eye and the chest piece. I want to, all of the new images I want to have accenting the things that I kept from the first suit. So yeah, there you go. There's a little bit more about what I didn't like about the first bodysuit, and a lot about what went wrong in my opinion. There's a lot that gets lost in your communication to an artist sometimes. Like, it's amazing how when you tell one artist, I want big monster tentacles, you get what I'm getting now, versus when I tell that to another artist and then you get almost like, you don't get what you asked for, you get something they wanted to do rather, and it's sort of what you're asking for. Like I said, again, it felt more like octopus anatomy, and not monster anatomy, I guess. But there was that breakdown in a communication of an idea, and I guess I wasn't forward enough when I was a little younger, or maybe I didn't know what was possible, or if someone else could have been doing it better, because the guy who did them was a decent artist. He drew a lot, he painted a lot. He had good ideas, but they weren't the good ideas that I wanted them to be, I guess. They weren't exactly what I envisioned. They weren't to my sensibility. And when it came time to either black them out or fix them, I thought of it a lot. I thought a lot on it when I was blacking out my arms and my shoulders and my neck, because that's what I did first. I did the right arm, then I did the black left arm, then I built the neck, and I blacked out the roses in here and stuff. I was leaving a lot of time on the tentacles. They were the last part of the bodysuit to get blacked out, or the torso anyway, before the legs. Because I was thinking for a long time I might have Rick touch up the tentacles. That was something I had talked to Lee about, the guy who did the blackout torso. I could either black these out or get Rick to touch them up. But every time that I would look at them, I would think about how much work it would be to make them, and then would they ever be possible to make them look good or stand out, because they were done so poorly. And it just became clear to me that it was going to be more work than it was worth to try and bring those things back to life. And that what I had on my hands, and if you were close up on it enough to see all the problems, it really just to me looked like a big gray blob with no contrast. And in order to get that contrast, it was going to be maybe impossible. And if it was possible, it was going to be probably years of work. So and it might not even look better in the end than the blackout, in my opinion, at that point, because I was already doing so much black work. It was just kind of like, is this even worth it to try to fix these, or would I be happier with them blacked out? And it turned out that because of how they were done, I was happier with them blacked out. I never liked how they finished. They finished in a weird way that sat just below the bend of the stomach. It made me look like I was fatter than I was. It's weird how tattoos can frame you in a way that can draw attention to the bend of the body. If you don't frame a tattoo correctly, it can really do the shape of a person's body an injustice. The artists that I've been working with for the last few years are big on making sure that tattoos flow with the anatomy and flatter the anatomy of the customer, the client. Whereas the guy I was working with for the first set of tentacles seemed blind to that aspect of tattooing. When he mapped out those tentacles, they cut me in a way that made me look stumpier than I am. Just a strange thing to say, but I got a feeling someone watching this will know exactly what I mean by that. And anyway, these new tentacles that we're building flow with me better. They're not going to cut me off in a strange way. And since the black work is continuous below the waist, I already have that body flow to where everything's connected already. So there isn't that that weird cutoff point where the tattoo just ends at a certain point. Anyway, those are some more of my thoughts on my first suit, and perhaps a part 3 of why I blacked out, as it's a multifaceted, multi-layered answer. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this one, check out some more of my videos on the channel, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.